All right, welcome to the definitive UFO news show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. It's going to be an awesome show tonight. We dig into the biggest UFO headlines, the fight for disclosure, and the push for transparency. This isn't just a news show; it's a real discussion. We break down the stories, examine the possibilities, and explore the unanswered questions and search for the truth. No political spin, no biased narratives, just the facts, the analysis, and yes, the conversations that move the needle. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G. Yes, it is time to dig into the show. So, we're going to go ahead and talk about, are aliens considered adversarial, right? And the reason why I wanted to cover that is because you potentially could look at this thing that we're dealing with as maybe the government is looking at these things as adversaries. The reason why I say that is because there are situations where we kind of deal with them like we would adversaries, right? And it would make a lot of sense if you look at, some of the statements that the government makes about the things that we see in the sky. Sometimes when there's drone flap, for instance, let's talk about the drone flap. So for the drone flap, they kind of, say, well, we don't know what these are, maybe adversarial. So when they're saying adversarial, are they still talking about these unknown or anomalous craft? And that's kind of the thing that I wanted to touch, because I think really on the surface of it, when we look at it, my whole narrative has been this entire time that okay, maybe they don't want to tell us because the power balance, right? They don't want to lose power. They don't want to lose control of the population, right? Which is still, I think, a good angle to consider. But I wanted to put that aside because really what I wanted to do was look at any other possibilities. Like, why else would they not want to tell us what it is that we're seeing? Like, why couldn't they just come out and say it? That's a lot of the questions that we always have. Like, it's real simple. The skies aren't supposed to be classified, right? The fact that extraterrestrial presence is here is not supposed to be a secret. So how could they and why would they want to go ahead and keep something like that classified? We're going to jump into that and we're going to make sure that we get through this here. And I'm going to jump in. Let me go ahead and say what's up to the people that are out there and who kind of stuck through the snafu. Let me go back here. We have, I know Magneticus Attractus is here. Let's see. We have UFO Tim James who came in. We have Ann Joanne. We have Operation Shutdown. Let's see. We have Mike Jones. Mike Jones. We have, let's see. Keep going. I did say Magneticus. Magneticus Attractus. Let's see. Lil Cam 51. Lil Cam 51. Appreciate it. Mike Jones here saying great show last night. Appreciate it. I felt like it was a great show too. I rewatched it and it was it actually was pretty cool. Let's see here. Who else do we have? Who else do we have? Love V Love. Maggie M10. We have Maggie M10. We have Love V Love. We have Little Nick. Scott Rosen. Scott Rosen. Nick Putnam. And hopefully those issues that you're mentioning in the chat are resolved at this point. We'll go ahead and figure it, and hopefully that's the case. Let's see. Who else? Cosmic Joe Chronicles. I saw you come in as well. Who else? Wes W. Decker in the building. Appreciate you guys showing on up here tonight. And let me go ahead and once again, I'm going to bring up the slides here because we were just getting into some good stuff, but glad to catch it early than later, right? To figure it out later. The phone number. The phone number, once again, as you guys already know, we're going to make sure that we go ahead and show this here, is 856-843-3444. That's 856 the dig. Make sure you put it in your phone. That is the call in line, and we do use that for the call in show as well. If you're outside the United States, it's 001-856-843-3444, or that's 001-856-8 or the DIGG. So make sure you go ahead and save that, put that in your phone as we go ahead and continue on. Once again, for the show purpose, I want to definitely shout out our members, because we do have memberships available on this channel. You go ahead and hit the description link, and you will go ahead and see where you can also become a member. Shout out to the members. We have Ann Joanne, the Beekeeper, Dean Unley, Maggie M10, Flat 6, Miss Catherine Jones, Cosby Joe Chronicles, West W. Decker, Steel Poo 69, Polly Rodderman, Lil Cam 51, Frankie B, and Fast Hemi. And we're going to go ahead, keep moving, and get on into the show here. We have classified UFO war, right? Now, my whole idea is, in what I kind of wanted to look at as far as this goes, is it possible that the extraterrestrial presence is viewed by the government as potentially an adversarial threat, right? It makes sense just when you think about it. On the surface, it makes sense. So, once again, when adversaries come into our airspace, let's talk Russia or China. You see it all the time. You've seen it on the news. Anytime they get into our airspace, what do? We scramble jets to go ahead and meet them to deter them from coming into airspace. And the reason why I'm even making the comparison is because it's essentially what happens when these anomalous craft are reported, right? You have a UFO sighting, 90% of the time, there's always jets that have been scrambled right after the UFOs, right? So to me, it looks like they're being dealt with in the same way, right? And maybe it's simply protocol on how you deal with adversaries, right? That's kind of the angle that I'm looking at, because it makes sense. And then also going back to, if it was considered adversarial, if they are considered adversarial, then it would also make sense why information isn't able to come out about these things, right? That makes sense as well. So when the government, when we're waiting back for something like the UFO files to come out, if it is something, if they are considered adversarial and they're using like sources and methods, which is something they always say, in order to explain why they can't really divulge information, then it makes more sense that that information probably won't come out, right? So even above and beyond the fact that, yeah, governments possibly are looking at this as a power situation where if they do release it, either they have to tell all the other secrets that they've kept secret, which is one angle that we've taken. Also, that, the citizens at that point, have this ontological shock, and then it's kind of hard to reel that back in. So that's been the main angle that we look at. But it's still like, we always still ask the question, well, you don't have to tell us sources and methods. You don't have to tell us the secrets, but you could at least advise, hey, we're having this extraterrestrial presence. We don't really know what to do. But the thing is that it makes more sense that if it is considered adversarial, then that would be a good reason why they would not release the information. And it just makes more and more sense the more I sit down and think about it, right? You have a lot of people that look at love and light. You have a lot of people that look at this as love and light. And you also have, people like myself who think that there's still another side to this. There's still potentially, a side to this that might be considered malevolent, right? As I said before, there's a yin and the yang in this universe. There's opposites. There's hot, there's cold, there's light, there's dark. And this is the rule across the universe, right? So good and evil would essentially be the same thing. And why wouldn't there be the possibility that, something that is coming here is armed at the very least, or at least has the ability to defend itself aboard one of these ships? And then potentially, with the nature of human beings, the way that we rush in to kind of mitigate a threat, you know, there I could see the potential there for some sort of conflict to arise. And just looking at that, I'm just wondering if there wasn't an event that we've had in the past that ended up putting aliens or extraterrestrials maybe on an adversarial list for governments around the world. I think it's possible because it makes sense why the information would be classified. And another thing that I wondered was, how has the extraterrestrial presence also maybe at some point shown the government some sort of hostile ability or you know, capability where we understand, okay, no, we can't defend that, or we can't defend against that, which would make sense on why we have this drone situation recently, and we have the government kind of just sitting on their hands, right? Because they didn't do anything, they didn't admit what it was really. And if that was the extraterrestrial presence showing itself, it just showed you in that moment that there literally isn't anything that can be done to stop them from doing what they want to do, right? And so it just makes me think. We're going to look at some cases because there a lot of people don't think there's a threat narrative. A lot of people look at this situation and say, no, they're here for love and light. They're here to help us. They're here to help us ascend. And I don't know if that's fully always the answer, right? I just, it just can't be, right? So you'd have to ask yourself, you know, when the current administration says, yeah, we're going to release the UFO files, and we think that should be possible because parts of those files should not also be tied to classified information. But if they're fully looking at this as classified, then I don't think that there's a time where that can actually happen, right? That's kind of what that looks like. So, with that being said, we've also had crash retrievals. And you have to ask yourself, because a lot of people say, how could these advanced craft come all this way and then all of a sudden crash here on Earth? Well, if there's enough craft obviously coming in and out, you know, you think the rule of percentages would say that there's going to be a time or two where something like that can happen. But on the flip side of it, are we really looking at crash retrievals, or are we looking at times where uh, governments around the world maybe have brought these things down? Because we do have evidence of conflicts at times, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we cover some of that stuff. So here, this is what I'll do. I want to start it off with, this was a video for everybody out there that thinks that the threat isn't there, or that we haven't had some sort of conflict with them, or they haven't actually reached out and done something to us first. I want you to watch this. Now, this is Tom DeLonge. This is from a few years ago, and I know what some people are going to say. Some people have issues with Tom DeLonge. Listen to the story that he tells, and in this, I think this sets the stage for what we're about to look at. So check this out.
Confront it regardless, but it's very real. It's insanely bigger than you think it is. It's not just a few things in the sky. It's very, very big. I got brought over to Italy. Some dudes with Italian intelligence in Vatican and UN, they were all there, went to military base, had these briefings, and they showed me a map of the Mediterranean. And what was happening is on the coast of Sicily, all these like apartments were like catching on fire. Like a microwave, boom, some books, boom, like the fucking couch, boom. And so the government came in and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? So they quarantine the area, get everyone to leave, and they're going, why are things catching on fire? They detected these energy beams, energy weapons or something that were coming off of like way out in the ocean in the Mediterranean. So this dude gets, he was a colonel at the time, and he was in charge. Oh, what they looked out and saw were UFOs were out in the ocean. So the head of the UFO program and the head of the Italian Navy SEALs get on an unmarked civilian helicopter and just fly out to go see what's going on out there. As they're flying, a UFO pops out of the ocean and shoots their fucking helicopter down. I have the documents on the Italian intelligence letterhead. I talked to the two dudes I was in the meeting with that were on the fucking helicopter. I have pictures of the helicopter being chased by the UFO and all the damage that was done to it with some type of microwave weapon or something. And what they found out was that there were airplanes and other helicopters kind of in the area, but the UFO knew that those dudes were looking for him.
So what do you think about that, right? So he says a UFO, he says these high energy weapons were being used off the coast of Italy. These buildings were being set on fire because of these high energy weapons. They look out into the ocean, they see these UFOs out there. They go out to investigate in an unmarked helicopter. They go out over the water. And then a USO pops up out of the water, shoots at the helicopter. That that seems to be unprovoked. That seems to be an incident that is unprovoked, right? So if we have that, if that story is to be true, if you were to believe Tom DeLonge on the story that he tells there, then that would be an incident where you could say that these craft have shown some sort of hostile intent, right? That's enough. If we have any other adversarial craft, terrestrial, Russia, China, anybody, and they fire on us, or if they fire on an adversary, doesn't have to be us, could be anywhere. If that happens, that usually is the beginning of a conflict, or at the very least, that entity is put on an adversarial list. So it would make sense that if these sorts of things are happening, and if this case can be verified, that there has been a time where at least that time right there would be a time that you could consider, or consider putting these things on an adversarial list. So it starts to make more sense the more you look at other things that have happened. The one case I didn't have here that I didn't put here, which is Fred Valentic. If you guys remember him, he was flying a regular Cessna. He was on the radio with air traffic control. He was reporting seeing something that wasn't an aircraft, basically a UFO, and the air traffic control heard like this scratching metal sound, and then he was gone forever, never to be seen again. There have been cases where we know of where UFOs have turned off the electronics on planes. Well, guess what? A plane without electronics is going to go down, right? If you can't control the plane is going to go down. So what did those pilots do to for those UFOs to take that sort of action? Did they do anything at all? Because if they didn't, then that shows them being the first to show what I would consider hostile intent. If I'm on that plane and they shut my electronics off, I don't think that's a good thing, right? So if they're doing that, and we know they have, and they're doing things like shooting at helicopters and other things, then it is very possible that if you're a military entity, that you would look at that as a threat, and potentially that would be considered adversarial behavior, right? So going back to why won't they tell us what these things are, or why won't they kind of divulge more information? And it could be as simply that they consider these things adversarial, and because of the methods they're using to keep eye and keep watch on these things, that it ends up being something that can be classified, right? It just makes sense. It just makes sense when you think about it like that. And so we're going to continue on as well. So there are some cases, obviously, you're going to know about some of these hostile UFO encounters, or where we have, as human beings, have been adversely affected by whatever these things are, right? And if your government is standing for the people in any way, if they are affecting the citizens, then yes, then they become adversarial at that point, right? So let's go to, I think we have Colares, Brazil. Let me make sure that comes up here for you guys. Let's see. Should be the next one here. Colares, Brazil. So, for those who don't know what happened, they had a flap back in the 70s where a lot of people were coming up injured, as you see in the image here on the screen. I'll read this to you. One of the most well documented cases of U.S. UFO hostility occurred in 1977 in Colares, Brazil. For months, the residents of this small island town reported glowing objects in the sky, which frequently descended and emitted beams of light onto the population. Witnesses claimed that these beams caused burns, puncture wounds, and symptoms of radiation exposure, such as weakness, nausea, and dizziness. Some victims even suffered paralysis. The Brazilian military took the report seriously and launched Operation Saucer, an official investigation into the phenomena. Military personnel documented the sightings, took photographs, and interviewed witnesses. Reports from the operation suggest that these unidentified objects exhibited intelligence and targeted specific individuals. The events left many residents in fear, with some reportedly dying from their injuries. Despite the evidence collected, the Brazilian government eventually classified the investigation, though leaked documents later confirmed its legitimacy. So, a lot of people talk about, okay, sometimes people get affected adversely just by being in proximity to some of these craft. But if these are advanced beings, right? I think they would be aware of the adverse effects that they're causing on the citizens. They would have to be aware of that. They wouldn't just be unaware, right? So even if you are being affected from being in proximity and then they're aware of that, could that be considered, negligent at the very least, right? Could it be a situation where they don't really care how it affects you, right? Because if that's the case and it ends up with people dying behind that, then that's something you want to keep away from the people, right? So that would not be considered an ally. As far as the military be concerned, it would be considered adversarial or something you want to keep away from the general public, right? Which is another reason why it makes sense that with the government being aware of the presence of these things, that they are looking at them adversarial, as adversaries, right? And then look at that bigger picture. If they are looked at as adversaries, you think that, they're reluctant to just tell us that the presence is here. They would really be reluctant to tell us the presence is here and they're adversarial. Just think about that, right? Think about that announcement. Not, hey, we've been seeing these things in the sky. We just want to let everybody know that we are being visited by these things from another planet and we're trying to figure these things out. So that's shocking in itself. But what if it was, hey, we are admitting the presence of these things in the sky, and guess what? They are harming us as human beings. They have killed people in some instances, and that would be a much bigger deal right there, right? And it's just another reason why it would make sense how classification could apply to what they know about these extraterrestrial craft. It just makes sense. So going down, there's some that I hadn't even heard of here. We're going to look at the next one here. This one is another incident. This is the Mantell incident from 1948. So Mantell incident from 1948. And then you see the title of the paper here, Fort Knox UFO incident still stirs interest. So this is what, a year after Roswell, basically, right? And this is the incident that occurred. One of the earliest military fatalities linked to a UFO encounter was the case of Captain Thomas Mantell, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot, on January 7, 1948. Mantell and his flight team were ordered to intercept a large, unidentified object spotted over Godman Army Airfield. As Mantell climbed in altitude to pursue the UFO, he eventually lost consciousness due to lack of oxygen. His P 51 Mustang spiraled out of control and crashed, killing him instantly. Although skeptics argue Mantell was chasing a skyhook balloon, which is always the explanation, right? Classic explanation. The incident remains one of the first documented cases where a UFO encounter resulted in human death. Some researchers speculate that the object may have emitted a form of electromagnetic interference that incapacitated Mantell rather than simply causing him to exceed his aircraft's operational limits. So, once again, a time where extraterrestrials have shut off electronics, and obviously now you're in a flying rock at that point, right? You're in a flying rock, you can't control your craft. And if you ask me, and I think this might be part of some of the most scariest part about this is when you think about their ability to shut off electronics, right? There's obviously the cases like this one here and others that we know about where military pilots have described this happening to them, even current modern day. We've also heard of this happening with private pilots as well. So if it's happened to military pilots, if it's happened to private pilots, the scary thing is it's likely happened also to commercial pilots. And commercial pilots are obviously your Deltas, your American Airlines, your passenger planes with, hundreds of people on board, a couple hundred people, right? So you have to start thinking, would there, because of that knowledge there, and we know that this has happened to military pilots and private pilots, has it happened to commercial pilots? And if it has, what does it explain maybe one or two of the tragedies that we have seen over the years, going back 50 years where we've seen jumbo jets go down? Is it potentially because if it is, and we would never know, that knowledge I don't think obviously would be something that would come out, but it just at least makes you think it has to have happened also to a commercial flight. And if that is true, then you have to ask yourself if it had been the result of one of those tragic plane crashes. If it has, that's an attack on this or the humanity essentially, right? That would be a reason to consider these things as adversarial or not an ally, right? And if they're looked at as adversarial, it makes sense why the government would be speaking in the way that they do. Because once again, I think they speak in code. I think when they say drones, they're not just talking about conventional drones or anything that man has made. All you have to do is add the word alien on the front, alien drones, because then the statement that they make is still true, but they're just leaving out the alien part, right? And if you look back on all the statements that they've made and you make that little tweak to the statement that they put out, then it's almost them admitting what's happening on some level, right? If you read between the lines. So the next thing that we do have on the list here is this is one I didn't know about either. Really, I didn't know that this activity took place. But the Korean War, there was UFO activity and adverse effects to some individuals during the Korean War. Had no clue. And I'll kind of go over that. And I actually think I have an article that we can look at for that. But I'll start with this. During the Korean War, 1950 to 1953, numerous reports surfaced of unidentified flying objects engaging both U.S. and Allied aircraft. One of the most chilling accounts came from U.S. Air Force pilots who described dish-shaped craft that could outmaneuver their jets and emit strange beams of light. One declassified report describes an incident in which a U.S. fighter jet was hit by an energy weapon from a UFO. The aircraft's electrical systems failed and the pilot was forced to eject. Other cases describe UFOs approaching military bases and seemingly scanning or disrupting equipment. While there were no confirmed shootdowns of military aircraft by UFOs, the reports indicate that these unknown entities had the capability to disable modern military technology. Just okay, if these things do this unprovoked, right? And I think that's what we're trying to kind of paint the picture of. Are these things coming in our into our airspace and doing things unprovoked, right? Because you don't just interfere with another aircraft because it's there, because it's present, right? So are these craft taking the initiative to affect these craft and shut down electronics because they want to, right? Because that can be considered an action that would land them on a list like an adversarial to be an adversary. It would, right? And here's there's actually an article that I was looking at in relation to this. I'll go over real quick. This is History Channel put this out. They said when dozens of Korean War GIs claimed a UFO made them sick. In May 1951, 1 year into the Korean War, Private First Class Francis P. Wall and his regiment found themselves stationed near Chorwan, about 60 miles north of Seoul. As they were preparing to bombard a nearby village with artillery, all of a sudden the soldiers saw a strange sight up in the hills, like a jack-o'-lantern come wafting across the mountain. What happened after the pulsing, attacking light? The lingering, debilitating symptoms would mystify many for decades to come. As the GIs watched, the craft made its way down into the village where the artillery airbursts were starting to explode. Quote, we further noticed that this object would get right into the center of an airburst of artillery and yet remain unharmed. Wall later told John P. Timmerman of the Center for UFO Studies in 1987 interview, suddenly the object turned, Wall said, and whereas at first it glowed orange, now it was pulsating blue, green, brilliant light. He asked his company commander for permission to fire at the object with armor-piercing bullets from an M1 rifle. As the bullets hit the body of the craft, he recalled, they made a metallic ding. The object started behaving still more erratically, shunting from side to side as its lights flashed on and off. Wall's recollections of what happened next are stranger still. Quote, we were attacked, he said, swept by some form of a ray that was emitted in pulses, in waves that you could visually see only when it was aiming directly at you. That is to say, like a searchlight sweeps around and the segments of light, you would see it coming at you. He remembered a burning, tingling sensation sweeping over his body as if he were being penetrated. The men rushed into underground bunkers and peeped through the windows, watching as the craft hovered above them and then shot off at a 45-degree angle. It's that quick, he said. It was there and was gone. 3 days after the incident, the entire company of men was evacuated by ambulance with special roads cut to haul out those too weak to walk. When they finally received medical treatment, they were found to have dysentery and extremely high white blood cell count. To me, says Richard F. Faines, a UFO researcher and former NASA scientist, quote, they had symptoms that sounded like the effects of radiation. So that's a situation right there. Okay, we fired on one. So let's mark that down. So, we've engaged with these things from our side. So he shot at the thing, the bullets bounced off of this thing, and then there was a repercussion for that. So that would be a conflict, right? That's an example of a conflict. So if you have something that is conflicted with soldiers, American soldiers, would they then be put on an adversarial list? Would they be then looked at as an adversary? And I think the answer to that would be obviously yes. And here's the thing: there's so many. There's if once we get done with this, and you look at all the different examples, then I think you could obviously see, the plausibility of these things being considered adversaries, which would be reason why information attached to interactions with these things could be considered classified. Same as with Russia, any terrestrial adversary, right? So we're going to go ahead and continue on because there's still more. There's still more, right? And if you think about it, how many times do you hear this in this field, right? There's always the stories about, oh, they've never done anything to us. There's no reason to consider them a threat, right? We hear that a lot, but I think we've already gone over enough at this point that says otherwise, right? So getting further into this is one that's more widely known, and I think everybody knows about this here. This is the Tehran, Iran UFO incident, 1976. And you recall this one? We'll go ahead and jump into it. On September 19th, 1976, the Iranian Air Force scrambled two F-4 Phantom jets to intercept a glowing UFO that had been reported over Tehran. As the first jet approached, its instruments malfunctioned, forcing the pilot to return to base. The second F-4 also lost control of its weapons and navigation systems when it got too close to the object. The pilot attempted to fire a missile at the UFO, but found that his weapon systems were completely disabled at that critical moment. What makes this incident particularly alarming is that it was recorded by multiple radar stations, and U.S. intelligence agencies took the encounter seriously. The object's ability to disable advanced military technology without engaging in direct combat, it suggests a level of superiority that alarms both military officials and UFO researchers. And so that was another thing that I said, right? Have we witnessed, as the government's military, as human beings, have we witnessed instances where these things have exhibited something so off the wall that we just really understood in those moments that, yes, we have to, you know, keep our distance from these things because we are considering them as adversarial, but then yet at the same time, there isn't anything that we can do to combat, the things that they've showed us that they can do, right? And think about that because it sounds like why we didn't respond well to the drone situation or why the governments didn't. They just ignored it and just acted like it wasn't there. So if you look at the drone swarm as a potential display of the extraterrestrial presence, if that was them doing this, then the government showed you what the stance is, right? Hey, we can't do anything. We can't do anything. They could literally fry the entire New Jersey coast, and we couldn't do a thing about it, right? And I think that's when you look at their behavior, as far as the spokespeople in the government who came out and spoke on this, you could tell that nervousness was there, and almost that the feeling that they knew they couldn't do anything about it because it was not a terrestrial adversary, and they knew that. And it just goes further to say that our governments are probably looking at these things as adversaries. And so, if that's the case, how should we be looking at them as humanity, right? It may not be all love and light. It may not be all love and light. It likely isn't, based on some of the things that we just already talked about. If they're initiating conflict, if they're initiating contact in some cases that doesn't end well for us, then it might not be. If you see something landed on the ground, you may not want to walk up to it. You may not want to, you may want to be a little cautious, right? And think about just some of these things that we're going over. I think it's very important. And it's because we just hear too much love and light in the community, right? And it's a false sense of security. And I just don't think that's I don't think that benefits or helps us at all. So another case. This would be the case of the Soviet UFO dogfight, and just other cases as well. There's a few, and George Knapp talks about when the Soviet Socialist Republic folded essentially. He was allowed into Russia and allowed to kind of get a hold of a lot of their UFO documents, where some of the cases that we're about to talk about that happened in Russia, he was able to read those documents, and he came back and reported on those. If you watch anything George Knapp has said about this, this may actually ring a bell with you. And there's actually an article to go with this too. But let me go ahead and read about this here. So, according to the classified Soviet documents, in 1989, a MiG 29 fighter jet engaged an unidentified flying object over the Soviet Union. So, this is us engaging, making the first move. So they engaged UFO over the Soviet Union. The pilot was ordered to fire on the UFO after it intruded into restricted airspace. As the MiG fired its missiles, the object instantly evaded the attack, appeared behind the aircraft. The pilot reported that this jet's controls malfunctioned and that an energy beam from the UFO temporarily paralyzed them. The object then disappeared at an impossible speed. Also, declassified KGB reports indicate that the Soviet Union had multiple encounters with UFOs, some of which led to direct military engagements. One particularly shocking account describes an incident where Soviet MiG fighter jets engaged a triangular UFO in the late 1970s. According to the report, the pilots fired their weapons, but the UFO retaliated with a burst of energy that disintegrated one of the jets in midair. Disintegrated one of the jets in midair. In another case from 1982, a UFO reportedly appeared over a Soviet nuclear base, activating missile launch systems before shutting them down seconds before launch. This level of control over human military assets suggests an intelligence far beyond what contemporary technology should allow. This case suggests that UFOs have defensive capabilities that can override human military technology, which I think we understand. And George Knapp, when they talked about this, if you remember a few years ago, when George Knapp kind of, spoke about this again, because he went to Russia, the Soviet Socialist Republic folded back in what, the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, somewhere in that time frame. So when it was spoke about again a few years ago, when George Knapp came out and talked about it, it was reported at News Nation. And News Nation covered this. They stated reports Russian warplanes shot at dozens of UAPs or UFOs. Investigative journalist George Knapp says Russia has encountered 45 UFOs. So following, let's see. The Russian military and their government are not only researching UFOs, but also encountering them. According to a letter by investigative journalist George Knapp, which was entered into the congressional record, the letter claims on 45 different occasions the Russian military sent fighter jets to try and chase UFOs and shoot them down in some cases. There you go. More conflict between human beings and these craft. So it looks like they're being viewed as adversaries even over in Russia as well. Knapp is a longtime UFO researcher who has been looking into the issue for decades. In the 1990s, he traveled to Russia and developed sources, including the person at the head of the agency that handled UFO reports. Quote, Russia's program is likely the biggest investigation ever undertaken. Thousands of case files were accumulated. Nearly all of the witnesses who were interviewed were military personnel. Many of the incidents described to me by the program's director, Colonel Boris Sokolov, were alarming, Knapp said in part in his letter. He went on to say Sokolov said there had been 45 incidents in which Russian warplanes engaged with UFOs, chased them, and even shot at them. In most incidents, the UFOs shot away at unbelievable speeds, but in 3 incidents, the Russian warplanes were dibbled, which is pierced, and crashed. 2 of the pilots were killed. So, just that alone, even without taking off everything else we already talked about, just the Russian involvement with these UFOs shows that sounds like war. It sounds like war to me. 45 incidents where they're chasing them, dogfighting, shooting, being shot at. Sounds like war, right? And it sounds like if we've done the same, which we know we have, there's been definitely U.S. pilots who have definitely done the same things. Then how else do you look at that, right? If those UFO files were to come out, I think they would probably show that we've engaged with them, they've engaged with us, and it's bad enough that they would have to admit that the UFO presence is here and alien presence is here. It'd be even worse to have to admit that we're also at war with these things in some cases, or we've had moments where we've had conflict, right? And they've shot at us and we've shot at them. It doesn't look good. I mean, it definitely makes the case that this is very possibly one of the reasons why they won't release the UFO information, right? Because I know that's a big question. I know we've sat and pondered that a lot. I know a lot of people do. It's like you could just release it. Why won't you? Now, when you hear all this, it kind of makes sense, right? Kind of makes sense, but it is, just like we're aware that China and Russia are what, and maybe we can look at it potentially like this, maybe, okay? Because I was about to say with China and Russia, we are aware that they are our adversaries, but the reason why we're aware is because we're able to see the propaganda that they display, that they put on display, right? If we didn't have access to any of their of any of their press releases or anything that they say about the US, would we even know that they were our adversaries? Would that be made known to us? Maybe not. Maybe if the only way for us to find out that they were adversarial was through, our own government, but I guess, we have soldiers that have been sent over there, so the information would come through them too. But if soldiers were committed to NDAs, and they couldn't come home and talk about the places that they've been, maybe we wouldn't know Russia and China were adversaries. And if that's the case, then that would make a lot of sense on, why it is that the secret of UFOs being adversarial wouldn't be out, right? Just thinking this through, just using common sense and logic. I think there's a case for that to be true. So let's see, what else do we have here? So Tehran, Iran, the Soviet UFO dogfight. We also have, obviously, this is the big one. This is the one we all know about for sure. This is the Battle of Los Angeles. We know about this. We know there were thousands of rounds that we shot at this object, and it didn't do anything to it. thousands of rounds. So this is us firing on a craft. Thousands of rounds, mortar rounds, huge rounds, 50 cal rounds, all sorts of rounds that we shot at this object back in 1942. I mean, come on, right? Let's making the case here. Making the case here. This is aggression. This is our aggression towards extraterrestrial craft. We have cases where you just saw, we'll watch the Tom DeLonge video again for anyone who may have missed that, where they have just shot at us for no apparent reason. And, that is literally the definition of adversaries in potentially war. Those, I mean, it's literally what we do with any terrestrial adversary. They shoot at us, we shoot at them. Here and there, when it's consistent and constant, then I guess that's where the label war comes in. But if it would show at the very least that it's not friendly, right? It would show at least that relationship is not of a friendly one. So all these examples show times where humans and whatever these things are not on friendly terms, right? So with that to me is the definition of an adversary. But I don't know. We'll see what you guys think about that. We're almost done here. Let me get to this here because I posed a question, right? So shoot downs, which I was talking about earlier, are some crash retrievals actually shoot downs? Does the government have classified advanced weapons, right? Is that some of the stuff they're working on in some of those back rooms? You've heard me say that before. I hope it is. I hope some of this black budget money is being spent on planetary defense from any threat that comes from out there, whether it's an asteroid or whether it's a malevolent presence coming in from the outside. I would hope that we are spending money on planetary defense. And some people will say, have different feelings about that. Some people will say no, some people say yes. But I can tell you this, and we're going to look at this real quick. Is this potentially evidence of maybe something that we're working on? Maybe we do have planetary defense. And if this was us, which a lot of people think it was, then is this another thing that shows that we may be considering these things as adversaries? This is from shuttle mission, the NASA space shuttle mission STS-48. You've probably seen this video, and I'm going to go ahead and show it here, and we'll talk about what it is we're looking at here. So let's go. All right. So what are we seeing on the screen here? We're seeing at the top of the screen, you're seeing that what people consider a UFO meandering off to the left, and then it just changes direction, darts back the other way, as it did right now. And then what happens? Something shoots out from Earth, out through the atmosphere into space. And I have it on the loop so it'll continue to play. Is that potentially evidence that we have some sort of energy weapon, or I don't know what that would be, what type of projectile would move at that speed? But is it evidence that we have something that appears to be pretty accurate? Because it was, when we're talking about, where if that object that's moving didn't move a little faster, it might have been struck by that projectile. Are we doing this? Is this how we have retrieved some of the craft that we have? Is by moments like this where we have potentially shot that down. There has not been an explanation on what that object shooting out could be. And that is likely, it's likely, and it really, unless there's any other explanation that could be given for that, that is probably something that's not just maybe us, it could be some other country that is shot that thing off, whatever it is. But we can say for sure that whatever that object is meandering off to the left is intelligently controlled because it immediately stops and then jets back the other way. There's nothing out there in space that's going to do that except for a UFO. There is nothing else. And so if that is a UFO and that projectile, it appears that it is moving out of the way of a projectile that it detects. Is that projectile coming from some human being down on the surface of Earth? Probably is. It probably is. So that might be evidence that we do, or at least we are working on some sort of advanced weaponry, to kind of defend ourselves. And it just goes further to say if we are developing things like that, that we do look at these things as adversaries. If we're trying to shoot them down and we're shooting them down for research, but we're also potentially just trying to keep them out of our atmosphere, to keep them away from Earth, right? And why would that be? Is it because they are considered adversarial, right? You got it. We don't know the answer, but we're making a great case for that to be potentially what we're talking about or potentially what we're looking at. And it's just, when I sat down and I thought about it, I'm just like, there's so many different pieces here that kind of, if we were in court and we were making a case, I think we would be making a great case. I think this would be a great case, right? And so I always thought that was, that's definitely, I think, a thing that shows, that kind of goes further to say that we may look at these things as adversaries. And let me go ahead and get us, I think we're almost wrapping this up here. So yeah, are some crash retrievals actually shoot downs? Does the government have classified advanced weaponry? We just watched the video that says that came from a human being, which it had to. I don't think there isn't any other phenomena that has been pointed to where that has been, we have evidence of something like that happening. I think that was just a great moment that was caught on film by the shuttle, and it shows a UFO getting out of the way of something being shot from Earth, which had to be us. All right. So moving, or maybe from another UFO. I don't know. We don't know, but it's coming from Earth. We can tell for sure up through the atmosphere. So with that being said, the threat narrative, right? Everybody loves to talk about the threat narrative. So is the fact that the government considers the UFO topic adverse to national security, which is something that we hear a lot, um, is it a clue that they consider UFOs a threat? And I guess I'll let you answer that. But I think we made a strong case that it's very possible that that is how we're looking at this. And it's not that just they're being nonchalant and acting like this doesn't exist. They're just essentially potentially not wanting to discuss, dealings as it pertains to an adversary. But then once again, go back and think about and maybe watch some of those statements that have been made about some of this anomalous stuff out there when they're asked about it, and the statements that they give when they talk about the drone swarms being drones. If you add alien before drones and you go watch that statement again, does it then almost turns into an admission of what it is we're dealing with. Just one word, adding one word to the statement, right? Because they're not lying technically if they say, yeah, it was drones. It's just they're not divulging that they were extraterrestrial drones, which I think is, I think if you didn't ask the question, shame on you, because some of these reporters, I think, should be asking that additional question. When you're getting that statement where they're saying these are drone swarms, and then you go to them being adversarial, you got to go further than that. Are these, because you say, are they adversarial? And they say, well, there's possible, they could be. Okay, are they extraterrestrial? drones, or are they extraterrestrial adversarial drones? Next time a reporter's in the room and they ask that question, they get that answer. That's the next question they need to ask, because maybe they'll be truthful, or maybe you'll catch them in a moment where they give more information than they should, or there's at least some sort of tell that kind of hints at maybe that's the bit, because that question hasn't been asked yet. Every time we have these press conferences, and it always stops at, is it adversarial? They don't take that next step. And I think it's very important that whoever's in that room, that press room that gets to ask these questions, ask that fundamental, important next question on, yes, okay, you say they're drones. Are they made here, or are they made somewhere else? I would love to see what the answer to that is when presented. Yeah, yeah, and that's pretty much it. So I think we pretty much made the case that at some point in time we may have engaged in some sort of classified UFO war. Very possible, right? Not fear mongering, showing examples, making a case, using common sense that we have, using examples. And I think if you take this, and then the next time someone says, oh, there's no examples of them doing anything malevolent, direct them to this video. Because I think we have too many examples here that shows that this is something that you should at least be considering. It should at least be in somewhere in your mind, forefront, back of your mind. It should be at least be somewhere, in your rationale when you're trying to, as we all are trying to figure out these answers. It should be something that's right there in the forefront. Maybe you show this to someone, and maybe they change their perspective a little bit on how they're looking at this. Like, hey, you might be right. There are a lot of examples. Because once again, when this stuff is all sporadically out there in the world, all these different cases, you don't see the big picture until you put it all together. Then when you put it all together, it's like, whoa, okay, I get it. So that's what we did today. That's what we did today. Not clickbait at all. Classified UFO war. You know, um, our world's governments hiding a UFO threat. I'll let you guys answer that. I'll let you answer that. That has been the show. That has been the show. We're gonna make sure that we edit out the things that happened before, so this could be a solid thing. I definitely appreciate everybody for hanging in there and allowing us to get through this. I think it's very important to have this out there. Make sure you share this with someone that I think it's important to do. Also, once again, social bits are coming. I'm definitely working on them in the background. If I can get past the hiccups of this program, I'm really at a point to where I'm going to decide if I continue with this or not. I'm not having too many issues. I don't like issues, but you see, we can work through those. But I don't want to keep doing that. So social bits are coming soon. Also, we have our shows. The Social Dig. We have also my experience with the phenomena. We have the late night call-in show, and we have what you're watching right now, which is the definitive UFO news show. I want to go ahead and look in the comments to see if anybody has any. Tell me what you think about the UFO threat. Did you realize that that much activity was out there? I would definitely like to know. Woo Riders DG. That big bright light could have been the weapon firing, possibly space based infrared system. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. Woo Riders DG question, Rob, thoughts on the CIA remote viewing leak of 1980s remote viewing program looking for Ark of the Covenant? I haven't gone that down that rabbit hole yet, but Derek, but I'll tell you what, I was thinking as I was doing all this, I was thinking about remote viewing and how the government even became aware to begin that program, right? Like what made them start that program? What did they know or what did they see that let them know that that's something that they should be looking into, right? That's a question. I was literally thinking about this maybe a day or two ago. Like what was the initial thought process? Who who just thinks of, hey, let's see if we can remote view something on the other side of the world? How does that just come into your thought process? And I was thinking about that and I was like, okay, we had to have been shown that at some point in time. And so, does that also tie into this? In some of these interactions and various encounters that the military and government has had with these things that we've seen right here, has because of that, is that the reason that they began to look into remote viewing to begin with? And the answer to that is probably yes. So that's awesome that you brought that up because I was literally just thinking about that uh a day or two ago, seriously. Um let's see. And I appreciate you. Shout out to Area 51 and Woo Riders DG standing in for Area 51. Raji bringing the heat and never the sleep. Can you dig it? Shout out to Area 51 wherever you're at, pal. Let's see. Yeah, and Joanne, why are we being so complacent? Exactly. That and that's is see that's so perfect example and reason why I was saying if all this stuff, this information is out there, it's only when you put it together that you get to see the overall impact of what the big picture is. And I think, when we get as far as news cycles go and just the things that they put on our plate to kind of distract us from being able to sit down and put those pieces together, I think that's what's really going on. Is like they know all the evidence is out there. Just like right now, just like we have the ability to bring disclosure because of different individuals who have experienced things. And if we bring all those experiences to one place, then all of a sudden that full picture can be painted and they know that. So they keep this information sporadically out there and hope that no one sits down and tries to take and gather up and curate all the pieces because it's clear as day when you do it. It's clear as day. And there are other things out there that we could do the same thing with, right? That when instead of looking at it as a one-off situation, find the other times where that happened. And you might be shocked at the picture that you paint. You might find out that this wasn't just a one-time thing. Same thing with our guest last night on Spaced Out Radio After Hours, right? We had, he had done research and stated that when you called on the name of Jesus, that it appeared that these sightings stopped for whatever reason, right? So it's like if one person tells you that, it's just a one off. But if you have a room full of people who are saying exactly that, then it's like, wait a minute, okay, we might have something here. And that's the thing that they do so well is they keep us so distracted that we don't have time in a day to sit down and find those different pieces to put together because once again, I think when you do that, you end up coming to conclusions, that are right in front of your face. And that's where, once again, common sense, logic coming in to be the superpower that we have. It doesn't take academics or anything to do that, right? Any of you out there could do exactly that, right? It's out there, and it's just knowing what to look for, saying, hey, that's strange. And then, okay, so I'm going to take that strange thing and let me see where other times that strange thing took place. And that's why I always say history. That's why we lean on historical facts and cases because it's a representative or it gives you a better idea of how to look at what we're currently dealing with or what might be coming down the pipeline, right? Believe me, it all makes sense, right? We're not just sitting up here saying stuff. These were facts. These were all things that happened. And I think it paints a picture that says that we could consider ourselves as it stands Now I don't know about personal interaction with these beings, but as far as you're looking at human beings on Earth versus these entities, there's been conflict, and we may not be looking at them as friends on a lot of levels. But let me see. Let me go back here a little bit here. Let's see. Who is this? Yeah. All right. We're gonna block that user. They always come in the chat doing that. Okay. Who else do we have? Let me see. All right, that'd be great. Maggie M 10 said, I heard an audio of a pilot that went missing in Australia who reported a UFO to air traffic control in 2019. I haven't listened to it all yet, but I'll see if I can find it. That'd be awesome. I know the Fred Valentic that I was talking about, I believe was also in Australia, but he disappeared years and years ago. This is back man, I want to say I don't want to lie, man. I think it was definitely more than 20, 30 years ago. It was definitely way back, way, 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 way back. But if there was another one, I definitely would love to hear that for sure. Um, yeah, let's see. With all the abduction and Joanne saying, with all the testing and abductions going on, they have to be aware of it. Yeah, and that's just another element. I'm glad you brought that. I mean, I didn't even bring that up in here, but that's awesome that you did that, Ann Joanne, because that's another element. Look at everything we just talked about, and then talk about also the fact that people are being abducted and they feel like it's not a great experience. So let's just, so putting all that there. So, I'm just it just it's hard to sit back when people just say there's no threat narrative. And it's like, have you looked? Have you looked? Because it's all right there. It's all right there. So many different examples. It's all right there. It definitely is there. Oh, Area 51 is in the building. Oh, okay. I see you out there. Area 51. Appreciate you. Let's see. They won't release anything because Cosme Joe saying they won't release anything because of people like me being experimented on. Yeah, yeah, I think that's definitely part of it for sure. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. Okay. See if there's anything else here. All right, Woo Rider saying some say that's the real reason the Iraq War started in the early 2000s. Powerful relics like Ark of the Covenant. Yeah, I'm gonna look more into that. Maybe that's a show we could definitely do here coming soon. Magnetic is saying so. If you think government won't dump bodies in a hole in the middle of nowhere, think again. Man, they've tested. Look, we that's a whole nother show. I think I've done a show on that, but yeah, that's a whole nother show for sure. Let's see, super crazy movie geek with all the advanced species in the universe. There have to be a few that would like to beat us up. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that's what I mean, and that's I always think about Lou Elizondo when he talks about somber. It still sticks with me, and I may hopefully be having the opportunity to speak with him shortly, and that I want to ask him that. So hopefully I can get him on the show on after hours. It's a good possibility. I've chatted with them and it's very possible, and it's definitely something I want to ask him. So it's always something that sat with me when he made that somber statement, and it's I always want to know what is somber, and is it the fact that they aren't here to be friends, and that we have conflicted with them, and that we can't beat them, right? So it's we're literally trying to keep them out of our airspace because they land and they take people and they do all. So if we didn't attempt to defend ourselves and we just kind of let them, not that we really can, but we're at least shooting things at them and you know making them maybe think once or twice, like, hey, do I even want to deal with that, right? Instead of just letting them free reign and just not do anything, kind of just let them land when they want. Is that the somber thing, that there's really no hope for um us defending ourselves, right? Now, maybe I want to know. I'm gonna ask them one way or the other. I'm gonna get that answer. Um, Question, Rob: did your UFO sighting get you into ufology? No, actually, my UFO sighting, my very first, the sighting I had, 47 objects. I was already in ufology at the time that happened. So when I came into ufology, I hadn't even ever had a sighting. I didn't have any sighting, but I knew that this stuff was real. I had done so much research into the subject, and I was just blown away by all the different things that I came across, all historical stuff going way back. So by the time I had my own UFO sighting, I was already versed about the subject, which is the reason why I was able to capture it on film, is because I had already talked to sky watchers. I had already, been educated on, what to do in the moment that you see something. So I'd already been versed on that information, luckily, before I had my sighting, because had that not happened, I might have fumbled and missed that whole sighting and wouldn't have anything to show. So very luckily, I had already been versed in the subject. I'd already talked to sky watchers and was in a position to be as prepared as I could when I did end up having my first sighting. So that's why I always tell that story. Um, okay, Maggie M10 saying, I may have got that wrong, Mr. Rob. It was late last night. Yeah, I think it was compared to Fred in 1977. I think that was right about the time, yeah, that happened back in the 70s, something like that. That sounds about right. Yeah, please pass it forward if you can, Maggie M10. Um, let's see. And yeah, so we're current there. So for everybody, anybody maybe coming in late, this is kind of the cherry on top. We showed this earlier, but kind of bringing home the fact that these things may not be here for the for our sake, and they have actually maybe done things to us unprovoked. Listen to Tom DeLonge once again. You can feel how you feel about Tom. You can feel about how you feel about anybody in the field. What the thing I talk about is taking away the nuggets, right? Lou Elizondo. Some people say, "Oh, he didn't do this, he didn't do that." He brought you nuggets, though, and those are the things you're supposed to take away and throw everything else away. Same thing with Tom DeLonge. You take the nuggets and you throw everything else away. And this is what he said. I don't know why he would sit up here and lie, and you be the judge. Let's take a look again.
It regardless, but it's very real. It's insanely bigger than you think it is. It's not just a few things in the sky. It's very, very big. I got brought over to Italy. Some dudes with Italian intelligence in Vatican and UN, they were all there, went to military base, had these briefings, and they showed me a map of the Mediterranean. And what was happening is on the coast of Sicily, all these like apartments were like catching on fire. Like a microwave, boom, some books, boom, like the fucking couch, boom. And so the government came in and they're like, what the fuck is going on here? So they quarantine the area, get everyone to leave, and they're going, why are things catching on fire? They detected these energy beams, energy weapons or something that were coming off of like way out in the ocean in the Mediterranean. So this dude gets he was a colonel at the time, and he was in charge. Oh, what they looked out and saw were UFOs were out in the ocean. So the head of the UFO program and the head of the Italian Navy SEALs get on an unmarked civilian helicopter and just fly out to go see what's going on out there. As they're flying, a UFO pops out of the ocean and shoots their fucking helicopter down. I have the documents on the Italian intelligence letterhead. I talked to the two dudes I was in the meeting with that were on the fucking helicopter. I have pictures of the helicopter being chased by the UFO and all the damage that was done to it with some type of microwave weapon or something. And what they found out was that there were airplanes and other helicopters kind of in the area, but the UFO knew that those dudes were looking for him.
So yeah, I mean, believe Tom DeLonge if you want or not, but that's very compelling at the very least. What it was he just said there, and we'll leave you also with the potential video that maybe proves that we are working on some sort of advanced weaponry to kind of defend ourselves with the STS-48 shuttle mission. We'll watch that, and then we'll get ready to get up out of here. Once again, object top of the screen, going to the left, abruptly shoots back to the right. Nothing can do that with something intelligently controlled, and then some sort of projectile. Think that's proof. Look at that. So as quick as that projectile is, that UFO detected the fact that it was being shot or coming out before, and it seems ultra fast. I wish someone could tell me how fast that is. But that is ultra fast. And it detected it, got out the way. Missed. So yeah, that's about it, guys. So I hope I hope we painted the picture here, and at least, we walk away from this understanding that it can't all be love and light. We have too many examples of why our governments might be considering what we're seeing in the sky as adversarial. And then if they are considering it adversarial, just like terrestrial adversary, Russia or China would be a great reason why they are able to put a classified label on the information. And I think that makes total sense. Guys, make sure if you can, you go ahead and hit the like button on this video. I'm going to edit out the beginning part, obviously, where we had the issues there. And it should be a nice little package here. So just give me some time to do that. Share with a friend. Also, I will be filling in for Dave Scott this coming Friday. He's going to a convention, the UFO Con. So I'll be filling in for Dave. I'll be with R. Keith Andrews on Friday. And I don't know who. I'll be with someone filling in for Dave on Monday as well. So 4 days in a row, we're going to have the After Hour show over on Spaced Out Radio. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday is going down. Make sure you guys are all there for that. Once again, take a moment, hit the like. And if you are here for the first time, if you're lurking, if you're in the chat in here for the first time, we'd appreciate hitting that subscribe button. Consider doing that. Also, the notification bell. We'd love to see you guys back. It has been a pleasure hanging out with you guys here on the Definitive UFO News Show. We have more to come. I may post another show here soon. It's a lot to talk about. And maybe we'll get into that covenant thing, and I'll look at it and we'll see what we're going to do. Outside of that, Maggie M10 is asking, let's see. Mr. Rob, what's your email? I can't see it. So it's you can email me at I have a few. You can email for this show. Email me at book social show. So book social show at gmail.com. Send me the email there, or you can also you have the number 856-843-3444. This 856 the DIGG. If you're outside the United States, just put a 001 in front of that, 856-843-3444-001, 856 the DIGG, because you can send text messages there as well. Those will come right through. So either way, you can email me, text me at either of those places. And it's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys tonight. I'm going to go ahead and run our commercial for our humanity t-shirts here, and then we'll hit the outro. You guys have a great rest of your day. See you on Friday, and maybe even sooner. You may see me on this channel sooner than that. I got some things to work on, so you may see me here, but for sure, Spaced Out Radio Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday coming up. We're going to have a ball. You guys all take care. Welcome to the Social Shop, courtesy of the Social Dig. I am Mr. Rob G, and we are bringing you exclusive gear, and tonight's no different. We have humanity t-shirts, the positive progression of humanity. Yes, you can go out into the world and proudly show everyone what humanity means to you. $32.99. And remember, if you're a social soldier, you get an additional 20% off the price. That's right. Being a social soldier gets you an additional 20% off. And keep in mind, depending where you are in the world, shipping fees and taxes will be applied. Bringing you exclusive gear right here at the Social Shop on the Social Dig.